It's becoming very dangerous to be a MAGA Trump supporter. I want to go through some of these big stories that have me concerned as well as others. I have a special guest today, Rod Martin. Rod, thank you for joining me.
Great to be here.
So Rod is somebody that I follow over on X. He puts together these topics with these threads that just go really deep on topics. So I'm going to put a direct link so that people can find you. So you're very pro America, very pro Donald Trump. I want to get into that, but the first thing I wanted to get your thoughts on is down in South Carolina, a judge had her home burned to the ground. It was absolutely horrific. The thing that shocked me was then all of a sudden, Trump supporters and MAGA start being blamed for it. I want to show the fire, and then I want to get into why it's dangerous. This narrative. Let me show this to you and my audience. So just a horrible, horrible fire.
You can hear this thing burning.
So just absolutely horrific. How dangerous is it, Rod, that anytime something big happens to a Democrat, they immediately blame MAGA, Christians, Trump supporters, that somehow we went out and did this violence? Your thoughts on that?
It's extremely dangerous, and it's absolutely typical. And they're reaching a critical mass where we could have some real problems in this country. We already do. We, had the Antifa shooter at the Nashville Christian school. Another one in Minneapolis. Every time you turn around, you've got a mass shooting, and it turns out that the shooter is in fact on the left. That was certainly true with the Bernie Sanders supporter who shot up the entire Republican congressional caucus at a baseball practice, for heaven's sake, nearly killing Steve Scalise, and would have killed about 25 U.S. House members all at once if it hadn't been for the fast reaction of a security guard. And yet, of course, to cover for this, they are always projecting, these are these right-wing radicals. Well, just answer me this. How many cities have right-wing radicals burned down? How many? Because we had 140 cities that were burned by Democrats in 2020 alone. We have all these riots, such as the one in LA. Again, Democrats out on the street supporting law breaking and trying to assault federal agents to prevent law enforcement. This is the sort of thing that you see in many other countries where the left is seeking to build the climate for a revolution or a civil war. And it's very, very dangerous because sometimes it works. Sometimes you go from this tranquil, peaceful state as Lebanon enjoyed into 1975, and then you go into decades of civil war just overnight because of this kind of thing. We have to calm things as they keep telling us to do, but the only people who need to be calm at the moment are the Democrats, because clearly we just had Charlie Kirk's assassination. Not one city burned, not one riot, not one revenge killing, no orgy of violence as you saw after George Floyd. This is not a both sides thing. This is one side, and that one side is trying to provoke a revolution.
Yeah. Great point, Rod. We didn't see 140 cities burn. And even with the Charlie Kirk, when it first came out, Tyler Robinson, they said, oh, look, it's a white male Christian who shot this other guy.
Which was a lie.
Which ended up being a lie. And then you had a copycat killer down in Dallas that at 7 a.m. starts shooting up an ICE facility. They said, oh, look, it's a pro-gun MAGA person. Turns out he's super ideologically left. So I worry for the state of our country where people are now going out and doing evil in the name of politics. And then they immediately try to blame Christians or white people or MAGA or Trump supporters. And then with just a little bit of patience, it turns out it's somebody on the left.
Well, and we know why they're doing it. They're not rioting in LA just for the heck of it. They're rioting in LA to attempt to bring about a political outcome, to eliminate the Trump administration's law enforcement operations against illegal aliens. They're rioting in these places to bring about political results. We have a legal definition for that: terrorism, which is using fear primarily targeted at random civilian individuals to get them to do what the violent people want done. And that's how you get the situations that you've seen all over the Middle East for all these decades. It's a horrifying thing. It's certainly not limited to Islam. We saw it with the Red Army faction and the Red Brigades in Germany all through the 70s and 80s. We saw it in the United States, first with the Ku Klux Klan, later with the Weather Underground, SDS, all of these radicals. And in the United States, they all share exactly one characteristic. They are and always have been Democrats.
Yeah. Wow. Well said. Speaking of Democrats, something very disturbing to me is this new revelation from Senator Chuck Grassley about how Christopher Wray, the former head of the FBI, that everyone said, oh, he can't be against Trump. He was put in by Trump, but all of his actions were very anti-Trump, very anti-Republican, anti-conservative, right? So it turns out that he puts forward this Operation Arctic Frost. What did they do? They only surveil Republicans, 8 Republicans. So I think it was 7 senators, 1 House representative. And they're digging. They're trying to find blackmail. They're trying to shame them, gather information, tie them to January 6th. Then all of that information is turned over to Jack Smith, this wacky lunatic who then does everything he can to bring down former President Donald Trump at the time. What are your thoughts about all of this Arctic Frost revelation?
Well, we can start with the obvious, which is that half of the first Trump administration was working against Donald Trump. And that just became clearer every day. And that was always the downside to electing an outsider. He didn't know who all these people were. He didn't know how Washington worked. Well, he's back now and he gets it for sure. And it's just a completely different story this time. It's a miracle how much success he had. But look, this is an FBI that spied on the Trump campaign. And that's abhorrent. I mean, that is third world. So why wouldn't they spy on senators and House members? And if they're going to do those things, how do you distinguish yourself from Venezuela or Cuba? Because there really isn't any distinguishing at that point, just like the way the Biden administration did everything in its power to suppress free speech online. They were outsourcing their First Amendment violations to private companies, so they had the fig leaf of being able to say, hey, it's not us, it's them. No, it was them. And the Twitter files have shown that conclusively. So what you see is the Democrats in power are not your grandfather's Democrats. These are Democrats who are truly captured by the radical left. They are real socialists, and you don't have to speculate about it. You don't have to take my word for it. They will tell you. AOC, Bernie Sanders, all these guys will get up and just tell you, we're socialists. We believe in socialism. Well, yeah, you do. And when we listen to you, if you have any familiarity with Spanish at all, we discover that most of the things that come out of these people's mouths today are straight out of Castro speeches and Maduro and Chavez and Noriega and Danny Ortega. These are Che Guevara. This is communism. This is just communism. So, of course, in power, they do everything they can to suppress their political opposition, basically silence it and remove it from power. And out of power, they riot in the streets, they burn things down, they try to intimidate you into compliance. And this is what we've seen everywhere in the world, from the Russian Revolution to the coup in Czechoslovakia in 1948 to the overthrow of Somoza in Nicaragua. Everywhere you look, this is how the left operates. and it must be understood if we're going to successfully resist it without violence.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me, one of the people that was surveilled was Senator Josh Hawley from Missouri. And he just learned in the last couple days that his phones have been tapped. They've been, trying to get dirt information on him. And he brings it up to Pam Bondi. Let's watch this together and then we'll react to it.
Also heard them said, and I just wrote it down because I wanted to be sure I heard it correctly. I've heard them say that Joe Biden never targeted his political enemies. Joe Biden never directed his attorney general to target his political opponents. That's interesting, because I could have sworn that yesterday we learned that the FBI tapped my phone. Let's look at it. We've got a list. Tapped my phone, tapped Lindsey Graham's phone, tapped Marsha Blackburn's phone, tapped 5 other phones of United States senators. Gee, it sure looks like targeting political opponents to me, and yet I haven't heard a word from that side of the dais about any concern whatsoever. We've got nothing but concerns today, but no concern at all for a Justice Department that is tapping the phones of sitting United States senators because who knows why. They don't like them. They're members of the opposition party. They're Republicans. They're conservatives. You've seen this document, Attorney General Bondi. Well, what was going on here? Who ordered this? Who ordered the tapping of the phones of United States senators?
Senator Hawley, I cannot discuss the details of that right now for very good reason.
You're going to do a thorough investigation into this, I trust. Is that correct?
We will be looking at all aspects of this, and I have talked to Director Patel at length about
And
this.
you're going to figure out who was involved in this, who signed off.
Okay. I find two things very, very interesting. Number one, it was only Republicans, all 8, 100% of them are Republicans. And not a single Democrat is talking about the fact that their political opponent was targeted. I don't know. That is very weird to me. It sounds like with Pam Bondi, like they're digging into this. They're going to be doing an investigation, and she seems mad enough that something will actually happen. Your thoughts on what we just watched?
Look, the Democrats are just actively lying about this. Their talking point today has been that the Biden administration didn't target its political opponents in any respect. Well, wait, you were wiretapping sitting U.S. senators. This is grossly illegal, not to mention immoral and destructive of a free system. This is third world. This is what you would expect in Venezuela or China. It's just horribly wrong. And it's not the first time. And of course, we've seen this throughout their activities. We've seen this in how they jailed countless Trump associates on forgive the term, trumped up charges that had never, ever been used against anyone else. And of course, their hands are clean, and you shouldn't come after Jim Comey. Oh my goodness. Well, Jim Comey did exactly what they convicted and imprisoned Roger Stone for. And we all watched it on national TV. There's not really any doubt. So a jury will have a very easy time with that. But the bigger issues with Jim Comey, also a former FBI director, of course, and by the way, he has been cast as a Republican. This is a sick joke. This is a guy who has imbibed deeply of critical theory, of Marcuse and Horkheimer and all of those guys. He was a perfect pick for Barack Obama, who, of course, worked for Alinsky's organization early on. And these people have committed unbelievable crimes up to and including trying to demonize and destroy and remove an elected president on trumped up charges they knew were false, directed by the president, Obama, from the Oval Office. There is a grand conspiracy here, and the answer to your question, roundabout way, is Kash Patel has opened a grand conspiracy investigation into precisely those things. It can capture everything, going back to Hillary's server, whatever may fall within this, so long as they can demonstrate that there was an active conspiracy for a particular period of time. And what that achieves is, first and foremost, it means you can try these cases wherever there was a material fact of the conspiracy, which means you could get venue in South Florida. You could get venue in a decent number of places and thus get a jury that won't always, without exception, let Democrats walk and hang Republicans. And the second thing is you bust out of the statute of limitations on a bunch of this stuff because that conspiracy was clearly ongoing into recent times, if it has ended at all. And so, no, I expect there will be arrests. Comey was the first, but he isn't the last. Bondi and Patel and Bongino are dead serious about this, and they have to be. If we don't end the weaponization of government against political opponents, whether it's us or anybody else, if we don't end that, you cannot remain free.
Yeah. Yeah, I look forward to that. I mean, this is a big revelation that's just coming out. These 8 members of Congress, they are furious. And I think they're going to hold Pam Bondi and Kash Patel to getting them answers on that. The Fed has finally dropped interest rates, and that's great news for American homeowners. Expenses have been a major burden on families. Wages are flat, prices keep climbing, and for many, the only way to make ends meet is to lean on credit cards. But that cycle of high interest debt makes it hard to stay ahead. If you're a homeowner, I want you to call my friends at American Financing. Right now, interest rates have dropped, and many homeowners are seeing options in the low 5s. Compare that to credit cards charging rates in the 20s or higher. There is an easy path to see how you can finally put your hard-earned equity to work for you. American Financing can help you pay off that expensive debt, free up your cash flow, and keep your budget under control. Their salary-based mortgage consultants are saving customers on average $800 a month. And if you get started today, you might be able to delay the next mortgage payment. Take control. Call American Financing today at 888-686-8030 or visit americanfinancing.net/Gardner. Again, that's 888-686-8030. Let me ask you this. One reason I like to read your posts over on X is you're very optimistic. You love America like me. You support President Trump. What are the reasons in your mind that you're still optimistic that we can make America great again?
Well, I was optimistic in 24 when it was very likely they were going to steal another election and they were probably going to trundle me off to the camps or something, So if I can be optimistic then, now's a piece of cake. Donald Trump came in after 4 years in exile, being persecuted by the full weight of the United States and multiple state governments for 4 long years of absolutely illegitimate hell. And believe me, he spent every moment of that thinking about every moment of this second term. And of course, he had quite an incredible team around him to help him think it through. One of those, of course, is my friend Russ Vought, who is the head of the Office of Management and Budget, but also he's Elon's successor as head of DOGE. They are making tremendous progress. They know where the bodies are buried. They know what to do about it. So I think that we've got a real shot at unwinding what FDR began. If you'll forgive me for the digression, FDR created the modern administrative state, which is effectively a shadow one-party regime, because you've got 537 elected officials in the federal government. And one of those gets to appoint about 4,900 political appointees that then have to be confirmed by the Senate. And we haven't gotten a lot of Trump's nominees confirmed yet. So you've got this relatively small number of people versus 2.8 million unfireable, unaccountable bureaucrats who are all Democrats. All Democrats, because FDR knew exactly what he was setting in motion by creating these huge agencies and getting to staff them. He staffed them with people who agreed with him, who then hire their successors decade after decade. That's why when you elect a Republican president, historically, things don't really seem to change that much. because they aren't really changing that much. And Trump is going at that unconstitutional fourth branch of government with a meat axe. And fortunately, we have a Supreme Court that seems to mostly agree with him. I think we will undo Humphrey's executor this term. They're going to have oral arguments on that in December. And we saw Chevron go down back last year. That was a much bigger deal than a lot of people really realized. And wonderful things are happening on the legal front. But the biggest single thing is Donald Trump knows what he has to go after, and he's going after it, and he's moving so expeditiously that it's very, very hard for his opponents to keep up, which leaves them throwing Hail Marys like, hey, let's get $1 trillion in Medicaid spending for illegal aliens. Well, that's just brilliant. And there was no way he wasn't going to frame it properly. And the sombrero memes are just hilarious because they work. They work. It's exactly what Mark Twain taught us. Against the assault of laughter, nothing can stand. But the left can no longer meme, and it can no longer laugh. And it loses that battle in the long term.
Yeah. Wow. You just said a lot of really brilliant things. I love that. One of my favorite things about the Trump administration was Doge. And sometimes in my mind, I think, oh, that was such a great thing. I wish it had continued. But Russ Vought is continuing to do that. So what is his official capacity? And help me and my audience understand how he has taken over this Doge idea. Because, when Elon was in, Elon is very good at getting attention, just like Donald Trump. And Russ Vought, he's more of a put your head down and just get to work kind of a guy. But I feel like doging every aspect of the government is one of the very best things that we could be doing.
Oh, yes. Well, I have to say, the funniest thing Donald Trump has done, and most people didn't realize there was a joke to get, is picking Russ to be head of the Office of Management and Budget, OMB. Russ was the principal architect of Project 2025, which got so much attention during the campaign. And of course, Trump denies knowledge of it and all this stuff. And he's just messing with them like, the Trump 2028 hats. He's just messing with them. Everybody knows. And so anyway, he brings in Russ to head the central part of every president's administration responsible for the line items and details of the funding and operation of all of these different departments and agencies. And so he's the natural successor to Elon to actually run it when it's time to actually start getting stuff done. Elon got a lot done, and God love him. What an incredible instance of public service to step away from not just one, but multiple companies for nearly 6 months to just do patriotic work. But now we're getting down to the fun stuff. They've got an artificial intelligence application at Doge that is going systematically through all of the federal regulations that exist. You could never do this in your lifetime. No human or group of humans could really do this because it's just so voluminous. And this AI is intended to identify for deletion half of all federal regulations by the end of this year. Will it happen? Don't know, but they're making good progress. It's looking very positive. By the way, we have an article about that at rodmartin.org. Everybody should check that out. Just search on Doge. And, they're making tremendous, tremendous progress. Now, will we use this shutdown to achieve some fast forward progress? Well, maybe. I mean, I think the president is hopeful that we can end the shutdown by negotiating on a handful of things that he's already more or less on board for anyway. And then we get to those bigger battles when we get to actually passing the appropriations bills we're supposed to pass according to the law in regular order. But if Chuck Schumer is dumb enough to let this continue, he's just going to absolutely use his authority to determine who is and is not essential to not furlough all these federal workers, but to fire them. And then they're gone. and they aren't coming back. And either those positions get eliminated, or we just don't restaff them. Or if we do restaff them, we restaff them with people who will actually serve the president who was elected by all of us, instead of their own private agenda. And, there's just no way for Chuck Schumer to win this. I understand why he's doing it, but he is really in a box, and it speaks really well for our chances in 26 and 28.
Yeah, I agree. I think they opened Pandora's box, and now they don't know how to close it. I love that you pointed out that, because I consider myself to be a libertarian that votes Republican, right? And I keep asking, why can't we get more done? Why can't we get more done? But your explanation of the permanent class is mostly Democrat. And so even though Republicans win, they can't really get much done because of the permanent class. I just love that. I had another thought. I don't know if you can get this message to President Trump through Peter Thiel or Elon Musk or some connection you have, but President Trump needs to start mailing out sombreros that say Trump 2028, right? Like, I mean, look at how triggered Gavin Newsom is. He's literally lost his mind. They're sending me Trump 2028 hats. Imagine he gets a Trump 2028 sombrero. I would love to be there when when he opens that package, but that would be a great next way to troll.
And their only comeback is that somehow a sombrero is racist. That's funny. They were calling Trump taco for the last several months, and they didn't think that was racist. It's just absurd, and people are seeing through it. When we had a media monopoly, you had 3 networks, and you probably, with your rabbit ears, only got 2 of them, and they're all on the same talking points for decades. You could get away with this kind of nonsense. But with the internet, oh my goodness, we all have 500 memes to hit them with 10 seconds after they say something. And it's just so different and so refreshing. And that's exactly why they went for social media censorship. They do not want your opinion heard. And that's what we're fighting for. We're fighting for the right of all different people, including our opponents, to be able to say what needs saying, because sometimes we're wrong and we need to be corrected. So we have to have free speech in this country. It has to be an absolute. And touching on what we were talking about earlier, this is the true evil of political violence. Political violence intimidates people into not speaking. So you don't get creativity, you don't get innovation, you don't get debate about what would really be best for people. You just get top-down control. That's what they're aiming at. That has to be stopped. And hopefully we can educate our Democrat friends to not go down that path and come back to the path that you see guys like Bill Maher on.
Yeah. Every now and then I'm like, oh, Bill Maher is about to be red pilled, and then he'll say something extremely Democratic. And but bless his heart, I think he's his eyes have at least been opened that, wait a minute, maybe the other side is not as without blame as maybe they would make themselves look. I wanted to touch on one final story with you. You've got this Jay Jones running for Attorney General in Virginia. He wasn't getting a lot of attention until he had some text messages leaked where he was fantasizing about literally putting 2 bullets in the head of his political opponent, and that their children would die and their family would be in danger. Now, all of a sudden, Democrats are backing this guy, saying, we've got to make sure that he gets elected. I can't understand this twisted thinking. This is a guy that they should have said, shame on you. You shouldn't be thinking that. You're trying to be the top safety person, the top legal person for the great state of Virginia. Your thoughts on them now swooping in and championing him to win after these revelations?
A lot of Democrats, and particularly the ones who reside in Northern Virginia, are very much of the opinion that what he did qualifies him for the top law enforcement office in Virginia, not disqualifies him. They want someone who will go after their political opponents. They want someone who will, like so many Soros-funded district attorneys, let criminals off. That's how Irina Zarutska, a 23-year-old, slight, tiny Ukrainian refugee girl, was murdered in cold blood. And we all watched the video in Charlotte, North Carolina, of all crazy places, because a Soros-funded DA had let this guy walk for 14 prior violent offenses without jail. And they do this everywhere they're taking power. And you say, how can this be? Well, it can be because this is also what they did in Czechoslovakia. This is also what they did in Nicaragua. This is also what they did in Cuba and Venezuela and Poland and Russia and China. They use these violent offenders to stir up enough concern among the general public that when they give you some top-down government solution that transfers power from you to that elite group of leftists trying to take power, you willingly give it to them. That's exactly what they're doing. And of course, they're also trying to provoke us to go on offense and start shooting them, because then they'll be able to say, look, the Republicans are doing it too. And that's where you get the kind of civil conflict that allows authoritarianism to take root. So we have to resist it. We have to call it what it is. And we have to recognize this is not a small fraction of the Democrat Party as it probably was in 1968, but in 2025 and presumably 2028, we're dealing with a sizable percentage of the Democrats who actually are for political violence and are actually in power in their party. And that's just horrifying. I don't know how we come back from that, but I trust that we probably will, in part because Donald Trump is taking it seriously. Going after Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization, honestly, is a slam dunk legally. He's not exactly breaking new ground there, and it's not something we haven't done before when we had similar domestic violent threats. And when you get into that, if you treat it like RICO, you're going to discover that some of the top Democrat funders are behind it, because a lot of what Antifa does is frankly very expensive, and they are not doing it off their mom's credit card. So we're going to have quite an interesting investigation there, I think. And again, Kash Patel and Dan Bongino are absolutely the guys to go after it.
Yeah, I agree. I can't wait. When I covered that on my news show, I was like, yes, finally, let's go after these organized criminals. So, excuse me, Rod, thank you so much for coming on. I knew that this would be a great conversation just based on the way that you lay out information. It's just really well done. If people want to follow you online, where should I point them towards?
Come to rodmartin.org. We publish daily geopolitical analysis that Fox Business calls, quote, absolutely phenomenal. And so you want to sign up for that. And there's a link to my X up in the top right-hand corner on the front page. We have 275,000 followers and growing. There's a reason.
Oh, man, that's amazing. Okay. Thank you so much for coming on. I'll put that direct link. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.